Hey guys, Dr. Epic here. Welcome back to the channel. For new guys, this is a channel where I talk about stuff that I like and stuff that interests me. I find it's a great way to act on my passion for things and to learn new stuff. I like to find a fairly specific question to force myself to dig a little bit deep. This time we explore what is the best endgame decision in the Mass Effect series. This video will contain big time spoilers for all Mass Effect games. In addition to the spoiler warning, I will be posting an opinion warning. With endgame decisions, I'm referring to the big choices you were presented at the end of Mass Effect 1, 2, 3 and Andromeda. I'm going to look at the significance of the decision in the following game, the morality of the choice, aka how hard it is to choose emotionally and morally, and the presentation of the choice, was it cool and epic? So, if a decision has, say, good significance and good representation, that will give it a good rating for me. Alright. Now we have our method in place, so let's get to it. The first game up is Mass Effect 1. At the end of Mass Effect 1, you can make a few different big decisions, as I've defined them. One was telling Anderson to sneak around to get the Normandy out of the Citadel stealthily, or to tell him to punch Udina.
I didn't set...
The latter is always the morally right choice. A joke, we do not condone violence on this channel. Okay, so let's consult our recipe. I think this choice was presented well. You care for Anderson, most likely, so his safety is a valid concern when he expresses concern for his personal safety when sticking his neck out for you. The morality is challenging because of the same reasons. You don't want to waste his life if that happens.
Udina won't let this slide, Captain. You'll be charged with treason, a capital offense.
Hopefully he won't be there. If he is, I'll just have to think of something.
He does end up getting shot if things go wrong enough though, but he will still survive. Which brings me to the significance plot. This decision has next to zero significance other than a snarky quip from Udina from what I gather. No impact in the later games as I can remember. So in conclusion, this big choice isn't even that big or that impactful. However, there are two more big endgame decisions in Mass Effect 1. You can recommend either Anderson or Udina for counsel, for one. And I have tried both, as I can see arguments for both. However, it's really sad in my opinion that BioWare made the game in such a way that by Mass Effect 3, Anderson basically quits no matter what, and Udina becomes boss no matter this choice. It's in this game this decision would have had the most to say for the story, in my opinion. Imagine if they swapped places, and Udina handed you the keys at Earth and stayed to fight the Reapers. Who are we kidding? Udina is too OP. The game would be over before you tell Diana Allers to pack her footlocker and board the captain's quarters. No, but seriously, that would have been interesting. Perhaps he could have taken a different approach to the Reapers, and instead of fighting them guerrilla style like Anderson, he might have tried to broker peace in Dr. Breen-like fashion from Half-Life. That would have been really cool. I always wanted to see a Reaper occupation under this type of rule. We know these kind of oppressive regimes from the Reaper side exist. You could get one of those messages from Earth and talk to EDI about humans in concentration camps, so I always wanted to see the Reaper horror in that fashion. But this opportunity wasn't utilized, which is fair enough, especially considering how BioWare is being pressured by expectations and corporate rulers, aka the true Dr. Breen, to release the game within a certain time frame with certain resources. Remember, this game had to ship on the Xbox 360. But let's return to the recipe. The morality in this decision is good. Choosing between an annoying, yet undoubtedly capable and seemingly good-intentioned career politician, Udina, and a trusted, friendly and militarily capable war veteran, who might not do a good job in this position, but you can never know, Anderson. The presentation of the choice is also good enough, even though it may seem a little unprofessional to decide in a hallway on the Citadel, but to be fair, it was right after an unprecedented Geth and Reaper attack. The significance, however, is not very serious, like I said. More so than the decision about the sneaking, since you actually have different encounters on the Citadel in Mass Effect 2, depending on this choice. But like I said, by Mass Effect 3 this decision has effectively been made for you. Udina takes the role either way. Not without impact, this does affect war assets if I recall correctly. So I will rate it fairly impactless, but not without impact. It's still a decision I take seriously when I replay the games. The other big endgame decision in Mass Effect 1 is whether or not you will throw the human fleet at Sovereign to save the Council. Now this one is again presented well, and it felt, I'll admit it, pretty epic. The morality was challenged. Did you really want to save these annoying Council aliens at the cost of good old human lives? Right there and then, of course, everyone wants to teach them a lesson. But the politician would see the value in preserving their lives in order to maybe squeeze out some loyalty of some very powerful people. This is the endgame decision that has the most consequences and significance in the following games. You get new counselors, though some may call them reskins, but I found the new dialogue rewarding. This decision affects war assets also in Mass Effect 3, and the Alliance gets pretty gutted, if I recall correctly, from using so much force against Sovereign and the Geth. All in all, it has good significance. It's an impactful decision, and spoiler alert, it's easily the most impactful of these three endgame decisions in Mass Effect 1. So, Mass Effect 1 has a decent, impactful endgame decision. What about Mass Effect 2? Losing squad and crew members or keeping them alive is arguably the most significant decisions for many Mass Effect 2 players. But these decisions are made before the endgame, all in how you prepare before the collector base attack. The real endgame decision is whether or not you destroy the collector base. For a guy who started the Mass Effect series with Mass Effect 2, like me, this was a very morally tough decision. I hadn't met Cerberus as those Thorian researching terrorists in Mass Effect 1, and I saw pretty much only good stuff from them. If, granted, questionable ethics in their past. You know, Jack's upbringing, mainly. But the Elusive Man did say he had no part in it, and so did the logs in Jack's laboratory home. So, for me it was a tough choice. Like, you want all the advantages you can against the Reapers, but do you trust Cerberus enough not to abuse it? Do you justify the killing and torture of the many innocent colonists by allowing this abomination to survive? The presentation of this choice I also felt was really good, even though it felt kinda weird to be in this far and never before seen part of the universe basically, and then the Elusive Man pulls up on Skype. I know he probably piggybacked off the Normandy's QEC, but it's still a little weird, but I'll give it a good presentation nonetheless. And this decision made you question your resolve throughout the entire game. As for the significance of this decision, war asset change in Mass Effect 3. That's it. A lot of people have memed on this waste of potential, and I think it's justified. It's very sad. Some people have raised alternatives like, what if keeping the base made the Cerberus troops harder to fight in Mass Effect 3? Maybe it added a new unit for the Cerberus troops, new abilities for them. Maybe Cerberus used the tech to recreate parts of, or the entire human Reaper from the collector base, and use it against you with the knowledge from the Horizon Sanctuary, and now you have to fight in a boss fight before you reach Kai Lang. Sadly, none of this potential was utilized, so this decision was ultimately impactless. So far, Mass Effect 1 is in the lead. Next up is Mass Effect 3. This game had the most controversial endgame decisions of the series. They became known as Control, Destroy, or Synthesis, and eventually Refuse Landing. And I know I will get hate no matter what I say here, but I will have to stick to my recipe. First up is the presentation. The presentation changed with a later update, the so-called extended cut update. As for the launch version of the presentation, I thought it was good enough, at least from the perspective of how I felt at the time. I did feel like I was in some secret, never before seen place, and I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. And that was kind of what I was expecting when I was confronting the Reapers. The setup had a sorry lack of Harbinger though, I must say. And now I had to talk to this weird little kid from my dreams. By the way, real questionable of Shepard to dream about other people's kids this much. I have to say, I always like to be in a secret part of the Citadel, much like at the end of Mass Effect 1. However, the presentation of the consequences in this decision was not good at launch. I was comatose for weeks after my first playthrough because of the heartbreak and not knowing what would happen to Shepard and the galaxy. This has to remove some points. This was mitigated with the extended cut, and now when I play the games I'm fairly satisfied on playthroughs. I try to distinguish my feelings from those emerging out of my hate for bad design decisions, and the feelings simply coming from the sadness of this masterful adventure being over. Only the former can be blamed on the developers and executives. And though the presentation of the consequences was mitigated, I still think it could have been even more fleshed out. I think they should have gone all in, Lord of the Rings style, showing basically every important character's aftermath. Javik racing a Hanar army, Tali riding money-stealing space cows on a Rannoch ranch, etc. I may be asking for much, but at the same time I don't feel like I really am, considering the length of the Mass Effect series. Additionally, I should point out, maybe less is more. Maybe it's better to leave things up to our imaginations. I still do think that even more should be shown of the consequences in such a consequence-reliant and choice-based game. And therefore I have to remove some points on presentation. As the ultimate installment in the series at the time, I feel it's justified to be extra strict on this part of the presentation, in contrast to our look at Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2. As for the significance of the Mass Effect 3 ending decision, there isn't really any way to tell, at least as of yet. It did not affect Mass Effect Andromeda. That's okay, since that's a sequel and a spin-off in a different galaxy. There is a sequel planned in the Milky Way, seemingly, and how it will treat the endgame decision in Mass Effect 3 is still unclear, though it's likely that BioWare will choose Destroy ending for everyone, since that gives presumably the most freedom for their writers. Synthesis and Control ending both give pretty definite closure for further adventures, as does the Refusal ending. I don't think it's fair to give points either way for Mass Effect 3 here on the significance, since we don't know how it will pan out. We only know the potential. But going off potential, Mass Effect 2 also should have won over Mass Effect 1, and we both know it didn't. So Mass Effect 3 gets and loses no points here. As for the morality of the endgame choices of Mass Effect 3, there are some pretty heavy philosophical and ethical implications of these three choices. Destroy ending is pretty clear cut. You rid the galaxy of genocidal space monsters who have been eradicating countless lives and souls for untold ages. The only sad part is that you could lose good guy Geths and Edie, and in the moment you think that Shepard also could die given the formulations of the Space Kid. There's no doubt big stakes and ethical problems, I'll give BioWare that. Control ending is taking control of the Reapers to let your Shepard use them for good, presumably. Is this ethically right though? What about individual freedom? Is Imperial peace true peace?
Mantle of responsibility was an Imperial peace. Step out of line and suffer.
What about all the monstrosities the Reapers had committed since ever? They are each an individual nation according to the Reapers themselves, presumably with some autonomy, though I think this needs to be understood different from our autonomy and individuality. But it's a difficult choice when you stop and really think about it. Also, this was the Elusive Man's choice. Do you trust that guy? Do you sympathize with his thoughts? These are questions you have to answer if you want to seriously choose the control ending, which I think you can argue for. It's the right choice, of course. Synthesis is seemingly the perfect choice for many people. However, this also has ethical problems. Why does Shepard have the right to alter all galactic life on this level? Exactly what the change is not clear either, but it is clear that you fundamentally alter all life, changing everyone without their consent, how they view things, how they learn, how they live. Is that right? Of course, here as well, you can argue either way. Which is what I appreciate with the Mass Effect 3 endgame choices, that they gave serious moral challenges. You can, as of the extended cuts, also decide not to do anything, which is also a choice. This choice wasn't, like I said, included in the launch version of the game, but it came after massive fan backlash to the original endings. This leads to the extinction of the galaxy's advanced societies, but the next cycle manages to do what Shepard refused to do. What they do is not super clear. I always presume they just hunted the Reapers down in dark space and blew them up or something. The point for us, however, is that we choose to do nothing. And there are philosophic schools of thought arguing that this is the only right choice. Shepard has no right to choose the other active choices on behalf of others. To that I say, inaction is also a choice. You can no doubt argue to and forth about whether or not this decision is the morally right one. Some have called it a meme ending.
So be it.
Implemented as a troll from Bioware, but I don't think that's totally fair. Whether or not Bioware was trolling when adding it, I still think philosophically it's an interesting choice. But me and many others probably felt that it wasn't worth doing all this stuff in the games, just to end up not doing anything. But that can also honestly be seen as sort of a deep, ironic twist, making choices for 3 games and then at the end, not making a choice. It's morally interesting and challenging nonetheless when you think about it. I have to give this to the Mass Effect 3 ending. It's no doubt an impactful endgame decision in Mass Effect 3, emotionally and morally. But Mass Effect 3 loses points for severely lacking presentation at launch, and in my opinion, still lacking presentation in current year. Significance gives or takes no points, so we'll have to wait for the next Mass Effect game. So far, it's an exciting competition between the games. As for the next game, and last game as of current year, Mass Effect Andromeda has 3 big endgame decisions that can happen in the final mission. And to be honest with you guys, I couldn't remember these off the top of my head, so I had to do some digging online to find the choices. I found 3 choices that I vaguely remember now that I read them, and I will list them. The choices pertain to Captain Dunn's life, a kill code, and the Nexus Ambassador. And Captain Dunn's life depends on whether or not you did previous side quests, so it's not really an endgame decision that I will explore here, like some kind of Suicide Squad members from Mass Effect 2. The same goes for the kill code, which is something you can receive from the Cat Primus in an Eladon side quest, apparently, that weakens the cat in the final mission. So, the only endgame decision in Mass Effect Andromeda that I found and remember is the choice of the Nexus Ambassador. I can't really remember who I chose the first time, but I'll list the alternatives for you here. You could have the Moshai. She's the Angaran leader type, and she's a knowledgeable scientist kind of person. She likes exploration and has that kind of perspective on things. She's hardcore though, having used her captivity and torture time at the Archon ship to gather intelligence on them. After choosing her, she admits this job, however, is a lot of responsibility for her. This tells me that she's a little unsure about her qualifications here, but hey, haven't we all felt like that in a new job? I wish her all the best. She fears that her job isn't enough to bring substantial praise from the Angara. As for that, we can only wait and see. August Bradley is the other choice. He's the Alliance veteran turned mayor of Prodromos. He reminds me in many ways of Anderson in the way that he's a grizzled military veteran stuck in a politician's role that he'd rather not be in, and that he feels he does not fit in that role. If you make August an ambassador, he does take the responsibility, but only as far as it is a temporary gig for him. I feel he will leave this position if the circumstances demand it, and that he may not be as diplomatically gifted as most other candidates, seeing as he gives me those Anderson vibes, talking with his fists and whatnot. Though you can argue that this is exactly what this ambassador position needs. Again, you can only wait and see. Nakmor Morda is the Krogan leader of New Tuchanka. It will likely enhance Krogan interests choosing her and offer a counterweight to Tan's anti-Krogan sentiments. Morda is not very alien-friendly and truly an unorthodox choice for diplomats and a politician for the same reasons that Bradley is an unorthodox choice. I believe Morda will treat the initiative differently depending on if you give her the stolen remnant starship core or not. If you withhold it and make her an ambassador, I'm sure she will exploit this against us. However, if you give this core to her and make her the ambassador, it might make the Krogan both strong and friendly. You preferably want the Krogan to be both. We'll have to wait and see what happens. The last choice is the Salarian Pathfinder, and this can be two different Salarians depending on your earlier choices. Zevin Reka and Luman Hyger. I tried to pronounce it, okay. It's alien language, give me a break. Anyways, Reka is a capable, smart and trained Pathfinder who was earlier in life groomed for political life as a Dalatrass, apparently, according to the Mass Effect Wikipedia. This does tell us she has political insights as well as hands-on practical knowledge of these processes. All very good qualities to have in a politician, sort of the best of both worlds. I don't think this is a very controversial decision in itself, but to keep Reka alive for this point in the game, you earlier in the game have to have sacrificed Krogan interests, so this might add salt to Krogan wounds, appointing Reka. Lumont is not a trained Pathfinder when you find him, and he lacks the relevant background of Reka. The individual itself, I think, is a capable one, and is rising to the occasion, but he might be a bit too young and inexperienced compared to the other available candidates. I don't know which decision is the best yet. We will have to see if Andromeda will play any role in the next game or what. So it is impossible here to give or take away points for significance, just like with Mass Effect 3. The morality in these choices are there, but it's not nearly as riveting as the earlier games and game decisions, in my opinion. The presentation is also pretty bland, in my opinion. So, summarily, Mass Effect Andromeda has a fairly weak endgame decision roster. So, now, the exciting part. Let's compare all these 4 games' endgame decisions against each other. I think Mass Effect Andromeda scores the lowest in all categories of the recipe, so that's out of the comparison fairly quickly and easily in my opinion. Mass Effect 2 loses serious points in the significance category, a good score in presentation though, and a very good score in morality. Mass Effect 3 scores very good, also in morality. It gets no points for significance, and sadly it has to get serious point reduction in terms of presentation, considering the launch date of the decision. And even after the extended cut expansion, they lose points for missed opportunity in presenting what the choices mean and entail, like I stated earlier. Sadly, this is something the Ultimate installment needs to consider. So in total, Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 score fairly similar, though I think Mass Effect 2 comes out ahead. This is because in both categories, presentation and morality, that Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 share, Mass Effect 2 wins. It's not fair to compare significance between the two, as Mass Effect 3 doesn't have to show that, at least not before the next Mass Effect game comes out. Maybe I'll change my opinion then. As for Mass Effect 1, well, it has multiple endgame choices with actual effect for the following games. It scores good in all categories, and cumulatively, in total, I think it beats out Mass Effect 2, since Mass Effect 1 also scores good in significance, with tangible consequences in both Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 for all the Mass Effect 1 endgame choices. Besides the, Irina gets shot option. So in conclusion, I think Mass Effect 1 had the most bang for your buck, best endgame decisions with the most significance, best presentation, and effective, morally challenging choices. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Do you think this recipe is a good way to approach this question? Or could other methods or factors be better? Even if you agree with the recipe, do you agree with my application of this recipe and my conclusions? Please place your thoughts in my comments, so we could get maybe a discussion going. People have solved these endgame choices in so many different ways, and I still think it's cool to talk about. Until next time, Dr. Epic, signing out.